feel I'm in the way.
I know it. If we're stretching the way, we'll be on.
Oh, yeah.
What's the red button?
It records.
Oh, well,
Oh, when you put that down, it records.
Why don't you watch the
Hello,
picture?
sports fans.
Well, let's baby. One of the noisiest babies. If we could ever get her to cry. They don't allow this baby to cry. Oh.
You miss teaching?
I haven't hardly had time to miss it.
That's what I thought.
But you were thinking a little bit about it last night.
Yeah, no, I said that I've been thinking about it because of all the things that we do to wind down the end of the year, and all the report cards and the folders and the achievement tests and all that stuff. So
You're probably glad to be home.
yes, I don't have to worry about doing all that stuff.
And this is Terry with a lot of backlighting.
I hope that's good.
Oh, that's very good.
What can you tell what the picture looks like?
Does it keep an aura?
Yes, that's a nice. That looks like a good picture.
And here's John. He'll probably be out of focus.
Don't do
He's
that.
normally out of focus.
Oh, well, he's got too much backlight.
This film in color.
Yeah.
It is in color.
It's a black and white.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you've got the money to go out and get us a color TV.
This is Marcus. This is how he looks most of the time. If you see someone on the street, that's how old he is. And this is a real camera shy person.
He's a criminal.
Oh, and here is the great-great-great-grandchild, TJ. Oh, my.
You want that taping? Barbara's trying to make. You want a ball?
Does it get out of focus this close? Am I? Here's the back of Fred.
Of PC World.
Oh, yeah. Camera, do you have anything wise to say? Oh, now, no modesty allowed here.
Look at her.
Well, I remember you had a wire recorder. You were recording us long before we recorded you.
If I go through there, will I make?
No, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Well, Grandma wants to go through, I guess.
I guess it wouldn't do to have the back of her.
Excuse me.
You're taping.
Oh, I'm great. How are you?
You're taping.
Okay, here we are.
We did that instead of an open house, which kind of halfway turns into that, but we've always thought an open house you didn't want to talk about individual students.
Open houses are nice, but they usually come really
You want to get us with our mouth open to receive a big just before Thanksgiving, and then instead of having open house, which is too formalized and too much to find out about the school,
Well, I think that I know that working out at the high school this year and talking with the principal and everything, he keeps telling me the parents don't want to be involved. The parents don't want to be involved because you've got a real shock coming because they're behind us. There is a whole gamut of parents who have been involved in their kids' classrooms and the schools all the way along, and they're not going to
So I bring some of those chairs out.
you can do whatever you want. Like, I don't give a parent coming, which is good.
Are you recording?
I remember when Jeff
Dorothy, look this way so we won't just get a profile.
that, and I asked her.
Okay, what do I do?
plug in here, no big push on my part.
Hey, am I on the tube? Hiya, folks!
Okay, let's see tap dancing.
I've been out.
Get
I've
the
been
gun.
out for 6 hours now, folks. This is my Sunday afternoon. I don't want to tap dance.
Get the gun. Dance, mister.
We're going.
I knew he could.
Is it working?
Well, stand up straight. Don't look at the monitor. What are you doing here? Why are you here today? Well, what does that mean? Oh, good.
Do you know what the significance
There's
of it
Kevin.
Now, is this what we speak if we want to be heard and not seen?
Okay, this is
Is
speak
this on
freely.
tape?
Yes,
And it's going to be recorded for history forever?
yes.
Damn.
You're too close.
I'm too close? I think it's a good picture.
Oh, okay. Okay. Cause see, I can get close to you.
Well, you know, you just get about this much. Like that.
Okay, well, that's what I see.
Yeah.
That's
thought
what
I'd
I
get a
see.
wider angle.
No, that's the $1,000 camera.
Oh.
Okay, this is Richard. He rented the camera, so if this isn't working, it's his fault.
Or if you break it, it's also
Yeah. Clunk.
Now you can let go. Okay.
The cameraman, you usually don't get the picture taken of you. You know what I mean? Don't do that.
Yes, look at that man! He's upside down on our television. Here we have some folks that are really flipping their lids for an Eyman party. Oh, I think that's a good job. Well, Nancy, do you have anything to say before you go back on your weekend leave? He's glad to be
Going back to the rest home?
Yes.
Where do you get to go now?
They're going to notify us by mail.
There's something that will be recorded for prosperity.
Oh, yeah.
340.
You can't see it.
Oh yeah, I can't push the button though. Okay, you push the button. Give the
What is
date.
it? What will it do?
We'll give the date
Oh, I
one.
don't know.
I
Oh,
think you should do a little
5/22/83. What's SU stand for?
Sunday.
Sunday. Okay. Now, oh, that doesn't show him here. Yeah, it does. Oh, he's in the shadow. Oh, you were blocking my.
Well, you're recording
Really?
right
Look
now.
at that. You don't have to hold it real still.
Can you show
Oh.
the house?
No, we want to look at the cameraman.
Let me see. He has some lice in his beard. If you get
Oh.
real close.
Okay, get the house. I'm not recording now.
Yeah, but you have to be careful you don't
No,
see the end of the sun.
I am.
Yeah.
Oh, I busted blinked it. Well, I'm gonna unrecord it.
Stop.
How are you recording?
I am now. Now I am. Crave.
Get pictures of people. Look at the blue sky.
But we're going to be doing something on camera in about 2 seconds.
You don't need to be looking at the monitor.
Somebody was telling me.
Must not look at the monitor.
Now, the studio audience will look at the
See,
monitor.
remember the key
Studio
plan,
monitor.
I see KK
Sewer
there.
job or something. For a mill, I know.
Now, Tom, we want to be sure
But I
you
didn't
know
think what it was. What I thought was.
where everybody has
One
to
time
be.
folks just wanted to get on the city road. Well, I thought maybe that's.
One time they'd included them in the district, then they voted themselves out of it.
These are two brother-in-laws.
Well, they have.
Fred and Franklin were one and the same.
Since Lucia and Aunt Lou were really the same person.
Of course, they were married to husbands that were the same.
Now, would you like this move? And you be right here.
No, why don't you sit there, the two of you?
Why?
No, you don't have to say please. I'm glad to do it.
You were so willing.
Well, now she has to pose again. She's getting tired of posing. Stop.
I'm sending one now. Now, are these kind of in the way so that they will show? Should we throw them over the edge there for a little bit?
Well, just like this.
Yeah.
That long.
Well, no, you don't have to have it that long if you don't want. Just like that.
I say, I pity the gals when I'm gone, when they have to clean out everything I've accumulated. I pity them, I really do.
You got your name. Well, now we're going to do this. We're going to do it one at a time and say something because it doesn't do. We don't get the whole thing with the.
There, I know what was it.
There.
That's right.
Where?
You're not gonna win. You're not gonna.
Now wait well, just a minute now. We're going to let's get the cameraman and the old lady together here. Just a minute. Are you taking pictures yet?
Yes.
Are you? Well,
You're recording?
no. Are you?
Well, he put his name up.
All right, did you get Philip? Well, let's call these people now. Marcus. I'll tell you, we got Philip. I guess we'll have to put Marcus up higher because we got Philip in our place.
No, that's tall.
No. Marcus, we'll put him up here. Wonderful. Can you reach that high, Marcus? Marcus! Marcus! Get over here.
Probably shall be getting up
Well, are we going? How do you want it, Tom? Are you just going to keep taking all the time? Well, the idea of this is for the kids to see the beginning of the family tree and the Albert Eyman grandfather, and then where they fit in the family. So we've already got the 4 children, Albert Eyman's 4 children on, and we put on their children. And well, you have to line up back here, and then we'll tack on your own things. See, and there, be careful, there. How's that?
Boy, that was
Now,
fun, wasn't it, Mom?
where is Kristen? Kristen is next to put her.
the camera in the picture with. Well, see how many more on it. Was this a 24 roll? I don't know if there's even any more.
Well, let's see, Richard, you have to be here.
I guess Dorothy told you. You're gonna wake up for the ceremony, huh?
Now we have Kristen.
Jim,
And Daddy's
I want
gonna.
a picture of you doing that. But I have to put more film in
Oh,
and you're
Mother, I'm
jumping
sorry.
the gun.
You're sorry. This is your only chance. Never do it again. Never be done again.
Jim, let me push to get Let me hold her.
Don't get a raincoat.
Faith is.
Okay.
I can see that. All right.
Is it light enough in here?
Yeah, I think so.
You can put that up almost to Philip over there by Philip.
Jim, turn so I can see you.
Well, turn so I can see you.
Turn the name around.
The heck with you, just get the kid in there.
Here, I have to see her face and her turn the name.
I know, but
And then you better have Richard do it, and then to both of them together. There. Get your hand up a little off of the sign. There you are.
Now we can't see her.
Now don't make faces.
There. That's a good one.
Oh, this goes where?
Yeah, right. Get there. Right
Well,
at
if
this
you
part.
can't figure out where it goes.
They must be brothers.
Okay, Richard, it's time to put yours up. Here's your friend Elizabeth.
looks like Joel.
Zooming in.
Uh-huh.
I guess
Elizabeth
can almost
She's
do it all.
asleep.
Oh,
All
again?
right, step aside, brother. Now, just a minute.
Oh.
There.
I think Catherine, it's going to be your turn in a minute.
Yes.
After
Oh, that's a good idea. See, that's one thing I was going to build it down.
You want to put right here.
it's over there. And the
See, now
blanket.
climb up on this because you want to put your name over here. Go with
You can put it up high or low because Diane will have it.
right here. How about right here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Push it in there. Up here with it too.
Have more film?
And then we want to run the string down here because his name is.
Does it go far enough? If not, I'll give you a different string.
He's waiting for his turn.
That's all right.
Katie?
Come on.
Come on,
Katie,
Katie.
your turn.
Whoops. Oh, I just like that little color. He's so sweet.
Well, where is Katie?
Where's Katie? All right, Katie. There's your name, honey. Now you can put it kind of under Elizabeth there, not too far over. Like, that's all right. Well, let him take a picture of Katie though, because you're in the way, sort
Well,
of.
just a minute.
Okay.
Hey, can you wave at the camera? Can you wave at Uncle Tommy? You can stare at it.
There. Okay, now that means that Keith and
Another roll of Kristen. Another roll of Kristen.
Is that it? Is that how it works?
well, now where's
Except
Keith?
there's one that has more of Kristen.
Here they are, I guess.
Oh, I see. Wait, the whole roll
You
comes.
do see Daddy? Okay, is Scott around?
Well, that's good. First roll.
Is Keith around? Scott around? Trot up your kids. This isn't gonna last forever. Anne Marie? Keith is wherever he is.
I don't know who's coming. My mom's getting it.
Scott, Keith, Anne Marie.
Keith is coming. Scott's right there.
All right.
Not yet. Not yet. Wait.
Okay, Keith.
Well, I'm glad.
Keith, it's a good thing you're tall.
You're in high school.
If he wants to, I think that might
On the verge of getting out.
He will be a senior
I think
next
it must
year.
be part of the machine.
All right.
Yeah, it is. Back
This is yours, and it should go up almost as high, kind of like her Marcus's is, because it over
Wait,
pretty
now I
no.
want to take your picture.
Get it over closer to Elizabeth,
So it had
and up a little higher yet, maybe, because we got
Turn this
over
way. When you turn and look at me this way,
have to go that way.
I'll just hold the shades and then you can do it with the other hand.
yeah, maybe that would be
now can you kind of look at me?
Like
good. Look at Mother.
over here.
Yeah, I'm here.
I see.
Which is more important, a still picture or a moving picture, Keith?
You're doing the movies. I'm sorry.
Okay, Scott.
Why did you say something, Tom?
And if moving, how fast?
Well, we're in slow motion right now.
You can have yours down the line from Keith's quite a little ways, but real close, yes, because we got Diane's kids to go.
Well, like, put it straight, maybe straight under Keith's.
Yeah, maybe kind of under, yeah.
And then Diane's
Put the
can
ribbon, let the ribbon be, yeah, put it over the top of the ribbon. There, like that. There you are. We'll attach
You're
the
in there
bottom
somewhere.
later.
Now look at me.
That's just right.
Well, thank you.
Isn't that
Well,
neat?
put it down, put the ribbon down under there, like it
Well,
belongs.
yeah, if you can.
You have to belong to
You have to belong to this
You
now.
have to belong to Robert. Now
All
where's the other?
right,
You belong to me, remember that. This
now
must
you
come
can
off.
be down kind of under the boys there because we got to have a lot of room for Diane and her kids.
He's 18. He was 18 in April.
Down over here.
Are you gonna smile?
Diane, let's see, I thought I fixed Evie's. Oh yeah, Evie's. Where's Julie? Julie dear.
Julie Bay.
Does you might be able to be over there by key. And maybe not that high, but not like, so that it'll reach to here maybe.
No,
How's that?
You would come to my house and play with him.
you don't want to be the Clinton. Whatever.
There,
Just
now,
go.
there. Oh, no, you have to go down to Diane. Well, that's all right, we can.
You're all right.
Well, Cheryl and Brenda now.
Yes. And
Yeah.
two more to get somewhere.
Okay, what about Cheryl? Is she around? Cheryl, with Brenda on deck.
What are they doing?
Pretty much like a nice big tree.
Yeah. I can't find my good tape.
Oh yeah, right here. I had a scratch.
Just go put your name up on the thing.
Cheryl, don't do it. There's a cat, baby, and
All right, Cheryl.
all the time.
Oh, Mother's in front of you anyway.
Yeah, oh, there, it's all ready to go, and you could be kind of there under Julie just a little bit if you want to. Because you have to leave, yeah, not like that. That's just perfect. Now look at the camera and smile. Brenda? Are you're next. Good, now you get the idea, don't you? Are you a criminal or something? Those are the only people I've seen pull their coats over their faces. Well, you weren't listening. You gotta have, yeah, that'll be fine. Thank you. What about Kevin? I think maybe Kevin will have to be king of the hill and be there a little more over Diane, so we'll have enough room for people kind of up in there maybe. Yeah, and look at the camera kind of while you're doing it. Yeah, that one. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Oh, no, I'll just sit here on the.
Your mother will be proud of you when she sees that being played in the family archives. Yeah.
Thank you.
When you're in the state.
Well, don't worry. We're going to. Well, I guess that. They did. Are you Jennifer? See, we have to have these things once in a while so we know who's who. Now you found your father's name in this, did you? And you can put this up about as high as the tail is, and then even so that Christy can have hers at the outside edge. Oh, like that's just fine.
I get to use it again.
Yeah, that's just perfect. That makes a beautiful tree. How about Christine? Then Jennifer, isn't that cute? See, Aunt Hilda, you're learning something. Okay. Now you can be up there any place you want to by Jennifer, but out towards the very edge because we're kind of crowded on that edge. We wanted to balance a little bit over to the left, right. There, that's just great. Great, thank you. Okay, we have TJ. I don't know. We've got it color coded if you take the time to find out. TJ, you look, you're on candid camera. See, that says TJ. Now that goes at the very top.
Can you put it up there? Hold on to it.
There, sure.
All right.
You need a tall lady to help you?
There you go.
There. That'll go right down to Julie.
There you go.
Yeah.
Just because now you see all the names.
Okay. I guess this ends it as far as the people concerned. Anyone not get their name up there?
I didn't get the afterthoughts.
We can splice it.
Okay. Now we're. Yeah, you can just start the.
I'd like to say that I'm Roberta Eyman, the oldest daughter of Albert, whose birthday we're celebrating here today. And I am Lucia, and I am the next in line.
And I'm Stephen, and I'm the youngest. I was the only son of Albert Eyman.
Now we should introduce some of the other members of the family.
Well, how about spouses?
Get Uncle Edwin up.
And Hilda.
Yeah.
They should have really maybe been first here.
Uncle Edwin, stand up here between us and tell us
Who you are.
now. Tell us who you are.
Come on.
And Aunt Hilda.
Maybe he can just turn around.
I don't know.
You think he can? Well, okay.
Uh-huh.
Yes, he can do that.
All right. We're going to have you tell us a little bit about
We need headphones.
Albert Eyman.
Yeah, a little more to the right.
Is that right?
He was your oldest
A little
brother.
more to the right.
Is that centered?
Yeah, that's centered perfect.
He was 11 years older than you were. Is there anything special you'd like to say about him now?
Well, he was top, so he was no better.
It's nice of you to say that, being a younger brother.
I didn't say anything that wasn't the truth. Well, he pulled me out of the ditch at a different time. My judgment would be bad.
Where's Daddy today?
Well, then he'd help you out.
And then he'd help me out again, and he never turned me down. He never turned me down. And I think in my book, he's one of the best.
It's nice to hear that, because I think we all feel that way. Now we've got Albert's youngest sister here. Move out a little bit. There, you got that big finger. Good. Yes.
Well, believe me, Albert was A-OK in my book, too. He spoiled me rotten. He was 17 and a half years older than I, and didn't accept me as a tiny baby. They had to, because there were so many of us in the family, he wasn't too anxious to have a new baby. But Aunt Emma showed him to me, tricked him really into looking at me, and they said from then on he just adopted me. And he did, he just spoiled me rotten. He'd bring me chocolate cream candies and all kind of things. He was just delightful. Thank you.
Joel, why don't you round up your family? And Barbara, are you around? Come on over here, and I think this is good backdrop as any, kind of a picnic backdrop. And Tom and Terry.
Oh, you want me to run that camera?
Look at that.
How quiet are we talking?
Somebody will have to run this. Terry and Richard and Jim and Kristen.
I was going to tighten.
Now just say a few words among yourselves.
I think you can move it around.
Let's have a big
Tell about your remembrance.
Yeah, and this tightens
Can you
stuff.
take a chair big? Jim, you're standing up kind of high.
Get one behind Richard.
Suck in.
Tuck in. Where? Let's see, you haven't got Kristen in there.
I was trying to think of
None of the other kids are in.
a remembrance of Grandpa. I have a lot of them, but I don't know, my memory's not too good. But Terry had an interesting one about driving.
Oh, I remember Grandpa was going to go over to, I think, Pomona Grange, and so he was going to be driving an automatic transmission car, which we had. So, but he didn't have one. He had a Dodge with fluid drive. So he came and learned how to drive an automatic, mother's automatic. That's what I remember.
That was the one time that probably Edwin pulled him out of the ditch.
I think the only thing I can remember is coming over to their house and coming into the front door and finding Grandfather sitting in his chair here fixing maybe leather harnesses or the saddle or something, or just doing something with us kids.
The thing I remember was them driving in the old green four-door Dodge, and how elegant it always was. You could sit in the back seat and stick your feet out and never touch the seat in front of you.
Of course, your legs were real short.
I also remember chasing the sheep around the fields for him and not doing a very good job, particularly.
Well, there was another story about Barbara, wasn't it? You were crying, and...
No, I remember that one quite well, and that was when Grandpa came by to pick me up to go to the mountain ranch, because when he went, he wanted somebody to go along. And Barbara had put the cat in the cookie jar, and so we had cookies. We were in the backyard eating cookies, and then when the cookies were gone, she put the cat in the cookie jar.
Mother always wanted to play.
Mom said, well, you can't go. And I was just really happy about that. I ran out to the car and jumped in and roared away and just really happy. I'm sure my head was high. And then before we got to Blackman's Corner, why suddenly this car roared around us and made us stop, and it was Dad with Barbara to catch up with us so that she could really go after all. And I was so mad. Hardly stand
me ever since.
But then when we got up there, we had to go and see the cows, and we just went in the car, just right over the stumps and around, crashing around through all that. And so the car was pretty well beat up by the time. The last I can remember, so we were real anxious that Grandpa get a new car. And we'd come over every day and say, well, haven't you gone yet to find that car? And we had it all picked out and knew what it would be, but, well, I'll get around to it, and I'll get around to it, but it didn't work out that way.
I remember helping Grandfather with the chores, and I'd come over and he'd have me do this and have me do that, and I felt real good about, him wanting me to help.
Jim would always come late for supper because he helped with the chores, and then we'd be through eating and we'd come running in.
Okay, cut. Are you
Is
ready?
it going? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're on.
Are we?
Okay, introduce yourselves.
Oh, okay. I'm Robert Schuller.
Thorns before
Lucia was my mother, our mother. Mostly what I can remember about Grandpa are the holidays, because that seemed to be when we got here the most often. Christmas was always oranges and apples and just sitting on his lap, and I can remember that he always ate an apple with a spoon. Never just take big bites, you scrape it off and eat just the pulp and juice with a spoon. And then the 4th of July was always, Grandpa brought the fireworks, and Uncle Stephen and Uncle Donald and my dad were in charge of setting off fireworks for the whole group. And it was mostly the good times. I never got in on the work at Grandpa's. Always on holidays, had a horse to ride. He'd go out and saddle a horse and ride it around to calm it down, and then all us kids could ride horses. And just had lots of good times.
Please don't.
Good.
Oh, that's it? Okay. Well, I remember a couple of things in particular, and one was sitting on Granddaddy's lap in his rocking chair, and it was about nap time for him in the afternoon. And I can always remember trying to breathe the same as he was breathing, so he'd go up and down at the same time. He said he'd be just sound asleep with him. Another time I can remember, the folks went on a vacation of some sort, and I stayed here for a while, and I can remember sweeping the hearth. Well, when the broom flamed,
out both of us went. Gosh, what else
I
can I
can
remember?
I can remember that vacation, but I didn't want to go home.
No, I can remember Granddaddy holding me, and there was no way I was going to leave him. What else? I guess fireworks. I remember that too. That was really a neat thing with everybody sitting on the porch here watching.
I forgot that old rocking chair with the smooth wooden
Yes.
handles.
Yeah. But that's what I. Now that's what I probably remember the most, and I can remember a piece of jewelry he gave me. It was a bracelet, and I don't know what happened to it. In fact, I think Jay still has his. Do you still have that one bracelet that Granddaddy gave us? I don't remember what was on it.
Going to feed the pigs. That was another big thing. Slopping the hog. Separating the milk, so we had something to from the old separator
that's
out
right.
so we could have something to take out and feed the pigs.
Those enamel pails and that spinning.
Multitudes and multitudes of pigs and pushing the gates back so you had the squealing and hollering of hungry pigs.
I can remember helping out Mama Pig though, and making sure she was well fed from the corn crib.
I remember that also.
But Granddaddy didn't appreciate that a whole lot.
There were a whole bunch of us in on that.
Oh yeah. We had lots of fun feeding Mama Pig.
Okay, we're rolling.
I have Anna Lou's paper that she prepared on our father that about where he was born and when. Albert Frederick Eyman was born May 25th, 1883 in Shanesville, Ohio, the eldest son of Frederick and Rosetta Eyman. When he was only 1 or 2 months of age, the family moved to the Troyer farm near Farmstown and lived there for the next 3 years. When he was nearly 4, they moved to Oregon, arriving in April 1st, 1887. The story of that journey is told in Switzerland to Oregon by Emma Close. They arrived, she tells us, with 6 children, a sewing machine, a clock, and $2.25. They first lived near Whiskey Hill, and the people of that area were long remembered for their kindness to the new family. However, all the children immediately caught the measles, and some were very sick. When Albert Eyman was 9, October 1892, the family moved to what is now rural Dell, and the older ones attended school, then known variously as the Sampson School, Ogle School, or simply Scantygrease. His schooling years were brief, but an intelligent and an inquiring mind pursues learning wherever it was available. He was extremely adept with figures, having mastered the principles of arithmetic in school and continued to study later. He liked to read. He always read the American Magazine, Collier's, Country Gentleman, Oregon Farmer, Oregon Journal newspaper, and other publications. He enjoyed books, especially such authors as Zane Grey, B.M. Bauer, Stuart Edward White, and others. I especially remember him reading aloud the Song of the Lazy Farmer from the early Oregon Farmer. In his early teens, he had the misfortune to injure his leg while swimming, a wound that never healed. As a result of that, he stayed with a sister in Portland for some time to be near medical help. During that time, he worked wherever he could. He later said that he was able to find work when no one else could because he made the rounds each day, and they either thought of him that when they had an opening or hired him to get rid of him. A yellowed clipping from a newspaper editorial written at the time of his death says in part, "When Mr. Eyman slipped away from the cares of this life last week, he left his mark on his community and his country. That place will not soon be adequately filled, as he created it by his good works and upright living." This was from Mrs. Case, his youngest daughter, and she wrote to me, "As we will not be present on Sunday, I send this to you and thought that perhaps one of you will read it. As I mentioned, I have tried various times to write about him, but even after nearly 30 years, the memories are too close,
the sense of loss too painful. I always felt while he was alive that no matter what predicament I might get myself into, he would, if he could, get me out. However, there are a number of traits and incidents I would like to record. Someday, perhaps, I will try again. Anna Lou. Now, my topic was the property acquisitions and the farmland clearing and daily business. And if you want me to, I'll continue at this time. As many of us know, our father worked on the Northern Pacific Railroad for about 3 years. The exact time of this I never knew for sure. I assumed it to be about 1908. He worked as a fireman, which at that time meant shoveling coal to the fire of the boilers. I know he had to learn to shovel left-handed to what he was used to, because the engineer did not want Dad's posterior to be pointed towards him. Dad did fire engines in the roundhouse area, and in his last year he was firing engines for short trips on the road in Oregon and Washington. During this time, his father, our grandfather, Frederick Eyman, told Dad about a 40 acres that would be sold to satisfy taxes, and that Dad could probably get it for about $10 per acre. The abstract shows $300 mortgage on this piece of property, June 25th, 1906, to Hans Spar at 6% interest. This he did. The land was the 40 that includes this house and behind the Hamilton house. It had a house on it that sat in the orchard in front of Roberta and Donald's house. This was the first home for Albert and Nellie Eyman after their marriage in 1912. Part of this house is still in use as a bullpen. Dad took a year's leave of absence from the railroad to clear some of his land. During this year, he decided not to return, but to become a full-time farmer. The next 60 acres, I never knew for sure who or when it was purchased. This would include some of the timber behind the barn and some of the fields. It does appear to be from the Joe Kaufman estate and purchased in 1911 and completed in 1914. I assume Kaufman had it to supply his mill that sat below Joel's house. This is south and west of the barn. This did not have any great amount of timber on it, but all of it had to be cleared. One of the fields that I know I call the oak tree field had lots of small oak trees, and the story is that Anna Lou and I made such a fuss about him taking down all the oak trees that he left the ones along the lane to pacify us. They are still there. The last piece of land acquired of the original tract was a 30 acres that include Bear Creek on the northwest, and the field that has one lone cedar tree in it. This was part of the original Hilton farm, but was owned and sold to Nellie and Albert Eyman by Drusilla Thompson. The sale was on November 20th, 1920. I did not find the exact sale price, but I understood it to be $100 per acre, or about $3,000 at 6% interest. I understand this was not paid off until 1940, and quite an issue was made about the fact that there was more interest paid on the mortgage than the original mortgage. This last 30 acres contained a good stand of old-growth timber. This was during the time that the Willamette Valley Southern Railroad was operating, and Father decided he could make more money cutting the timber into 4-foot cordwood and selling it to Portland, Oregon. He probably was doing this with other timber that he owned before acquiring this tract, because the railroad only operated out to Yoder and Mount Angel between the years 1915 and 26. Anyway, it was during this time that many woodcutters worked for Dad. Also, he built a shack on the back of the place to house them. This shack we knew as Bill Nutt's shack, because Bill Nutt came in about 1921 and stayed until 1925. He had a partner for a while, but they got into an argument about the correct side to mount a horse, and the partner got mad and packed his things and left. Bill Nutt could do many things. He built the garage and did other carpenter work. He also liked to sleep, and when Dad needed him for work on the farm, Bill would stay here in the upstairs where he could be awakened. When Bill left, he left many of his belongings, such as a new straw hat and an unpaid-for Model T coupe. The finance company soon reclaimed that. There was a small patch of ground cleared by Bill Nutt's shack, and about 1926 we raised an enormous crop of watermelons. There's a picture here that shows the old Dodge touring car loaded down with watermelons. Back to the wood cutting. This timber would be cut and stacked in the woods, and then in the summer or fall would be hauled to Hitchman Station, just above Rural Dell School. The wood was banked out or stacked along the road until fall, when railroad cars were ordered, and then it all had to be handled again, put on the car, and shipped to Portland. I asked Dad what he received in Portland, and he told me $6 per cord. This was also the way we got our first car. Dad traded cordwood for the 1921 Dodge touring car. The time of this transaction was 1924. This was the total amount of land that we had for a farm until 1940. Almost all this land had to be cleared. Dad seemed to enjoy clearing land. He did almost all of it by using dynamite and a stump puller. After World War I, the government made a lot of powder that had been produced for ammunition into sticks of stumping powder. Mr. Pitts of Canby had the agency, and we would haul out many wooden boxes of government powder to use to blow the stumps. After they were blown, the pieces would be pulled out with a stump puller. This consisted of an upright capstan with a sweep on top. A horse would be hooked to the sweep and a cable around the capstan and to the stump. His favorite horse for this was our old Don. Don was a Hamiltonian that Dad had raised on a bottle. He was very gentle, and as you can see in some of the pictures, all of us could ride him, one at a time or all four. He would even let us slide down over his neck when we wanted to get off. As nearly as he could, Dad laid out the farm in 80-rod lengths. This meant that every 2 rods wide on a field was 1 acre of ground. Also, at one time, he planted corn and potatoes so that every 10 rows was an acre. Dad worked closely with the county extension agent. This gave him a direct access to all the material that Oregon State College put out. He also participated with the Grange both locally and in county and state Grange. The main crops that we raised on the farm were grain, clover, corn, and potatoes. These he used in a rotation that would be one year wheat and oats, usually planting clover in the wheat. 2, clover and oats and vetch, or oats and Austrian peas. And 3, corn and potatoes. This was an era before fertilizer and sprays. The clover and legume crops would build up the soil for the cultivated crops of corn and potatoes. The corn and potatoes would keep the ground clean for the grain crops. The potatoes were red garnet chillas, and they were raised and sold to California for seed. The potatoes and the pigs he raised were considered the cash crops. The other crops were used to feed the livestock. The only other cash crop he raised was vetch, peas, and flax. Something should be said about the flax crop. This was fiber flax to be used for linen or twine, for sacks or fishnet. Dad first grew it in the early 30s when the bundles of flax were hauled to the Oregon State Penitentiary. This was the only processing plant in Oregon. In 1935 and 36, 3 plants were built in the Willamette Valley. Dad was the director of the Canby plant, and from its inception until it was discontinued in 1952 or 3. Fiber flax made good money for several of the farmers during the era of 1939 to 1946. War had started in Europe, and this cut off our source of linen from Belgium and France. After World War II, the cost of labor and the introduction of man-made fibers ruined this business. He also raised some vetch and Austrian peas when they could be sold for cover crop seed. He also had 6 or 8 milk cows and 250 laying hens. These 2 operations he tolerated but never enjoyed. I believe he was happy when Uncle Perry Yoder came and stayed with us, because he always fed the chickens and collected the eggs. Also, he always was there to milk the cows. Dad liked beef cattle, and for many years he looked for land that he could be used for pasture. In 1940, Frank and Donald Shepard came and said they wanted to sell the old Hamilton place. This consisted of 20 acres and a small rental house. They had planted the entire place to peach trees, and in the spring only 2 had survived. Dad and Mother bought this for about $3,000. It was at this time also that George Durant told Dad about the logged over land that Molalla Timber Company wanted to sell. Dad and Henry Kylo looked at it. At the time, the tract was about 1,800 acres. Mr. George Bunkie was in charge of the Clackamas Marion Fire Station at the time, and he talked to Dad about buying some of this tract. As I understand it, Dad and Henry bought some 800 acres of the levelest land, and George Bunkie bought some of the steeper land. Later, the 800 acres was divided, with Henry taking the larger tract that was unfenced and leaving Dad with some 330 acres. He spent a lot of time with a bulldozer, Lee Engel, Melvin Mitz, and others clearing between the stumps and planting grass so we could pasture cows. He told me someday I would farm lots of that place. Well, we are now clearing it and planting it to trees, but there are too many rocks to farm. I think he was the happiest when he was back at the dam and he had the irrigation running, or up in the hills when the grass was tall and the cows were grazing in it. I must say something about the machinery used on the farm. Until 1927, all the farming was done with horses. In 1928, Dad and Edwin bought a Sampson tractor together. I don't believe I ever saw Dad run this. Edwin, I believe, was the chief engineer. In 1929 or 30, when I was looking out the window at Rural Dell School, who did I see but Dad driving a new 1020 International tractor. He had bought it through George Blatsford's International Agency at Molalla, and although it did have steel wheels, they didn't bolt the lugs on until after he drove it home. I still have the 2-bottom Oliver plow that was pulled by this tractor. In 1928, Dad, Edwin, and Henry bought a steam engine and a thrashing machine. I believe this had belonged to Bud Jackson. The 3 of them used this combination for only 2 years before they bought one of the first combines in the country. This was a number 8 International. It would cut a 10-foot swath, and for several years Dad, Edwin, and Ted Kylo, who was working for Henry, combined all over the country. At first they charged $3 per acre, but later they dropped the price to $2.50. Later Dad and Edwin bought out Henry. They still combined out, but Dad drove the tractor instead of Ted Kylo. One farmer told me that Dad could make one round around the field, and by counting the fence posts he would have the acreage figured out exactly. About this same time, Dad, Henry, and Edwin bought a flax puller. This machine was built at the penitentiary. After they brought the machine out, the state sent a guard and a convict along with the machine to try and make the thing run. It had flat belts that pulled the flax. This was a man killer of a machine. One man had to stand on a narrow running board and help the flax up the belts. When they were pulling flax, they would make 1 or 2 rounds and then change jobs. One day they pulled 10 acres, which was exceptional because the puller only covered 3 feet per round. I thought we would really get rich because at the time they were charging $15 per acre. A few of the other things must be mentioned. Dad had running water before we had electricity. He had a gas engine on an air compressor. The compressed air drove the pump that was in the bottom of the well. In later years, the company went out of business that built this pump, and Dad became the chief mechanic for ours and any of the neighbors that had similar pumps. Dad bought a cement mixer in the 1920s, and all of our buildings had cement floors. One summer, I remember he had the barn suspended on poles so we could pour the floors and mangers. Dad also did lots of cement work for others. Bill Dreher would often help him with this. The cement mixer had a Cushman water-cooled engine on it, and often just when the project would be half done, a valve would stick in the engine, and everything would come to a stop. Then Dad and others would crank and pound on the motor to get the valve unstuck. Dad was great for tiling, and when it was done by hand, he built 2 implements to help. One was pulled by a team and a man rode on it. It had 2 long pieces of metal, plowshares, I believe. that fastened on the side. This the men called a go devil, and it cut the sod where the ditch was to be. The other was a frame that had a cutter on the bottom. This leveled the bottom of the ditch. It was pulled by a team. It had a handle that the men hung on to. The workers called this a son of a bitch. As soon as the mechanical ditchers came into use, he was quick to change to them. I know I've told this story many times, but I'll do it once more for the record. Dad didn't go to church often. One day, but he told me the reason why was one day when he was working at Kaufman's mill, he observed a very religious man beating his team that couldn't pull a log out of the timber. Dad stopped him and told him that because he didn't go to church, Dad, on all day Sunday, he had to live more like a Christian all week, and that he should treat his animals better. This is some of the notes that I have made, or thoughts that I have had over the past years.
Go devil. I built a few go devils. Okay. Well, just say your name and start it off. And something you remember about Grandpa. You missed the trial run.
John Eyman, and about, I guess the main thing I can remember about Grandpa is that whenever we come over to the house, we could always sit in the rocking chair, and if we were good, we could always find a horehound or two.
Oh yeah.
Something sweet to eat.
Paul Eyman. I can remember going to the mountain ranch one time. It must have been a lot like Joel and Barbara. And we took hay along, and we threw the hay out, and we had to cut the strings. And boy, I wanted to cut the strings, so Grandpa got his knife out, and he said, "Now, don't cut yourself. Don't worry about it, Grandpa. I won't have any problem with this job." And I cut 2 strings and cut my finger, and over we had to go to Tony the woodcutter and get a Band-Aid and back and finish feeding the cattle. But I didn't cut it too bad.
Show your finger where you helped us load the disc.
I was helping them load a disc and a roller one time, and I think I was just sitting and they were loading, and I had my finger in the wrong place and it smashed between the disc and the roller. And they say it should work. The doctor told them that they thought they got the tendon hooked back together, but I've never had it work.
Therapy.
Yeah, therapy. Yeah, I think I talked to a doctor. I smashed this finger a couple years ago, and I talked to the doctor about it, and he said if the skin was relieved, it would probably work.
Well, I'm Nancy, and I don't really have any big stories that I remember. The thing I remember most is sitting with him and his big hands.
Everyone had big hands, probably.
Okay. Thank you. Donald reminded me that when I was about 2 years old, I'd come over and Grandma always had a hammer in the kitchen. I can remember that. And I'd grab that hammer and start beating on things. Grandpa would take it away from me and put it up high. So after, this happened a few times, I'd come over, grab the hammer, hand it to Grandpa and say, "Put it up high."
Now we've got, before we get break up, we have a little skit or some material at Diane's family and Lucia's family.
This is kind of on the social.
Okay.
Go ahead. And a lot of that, why don't you just read over it? A lot of it Stephen went through, but maybe that's
I was
okay.
gonna say there's enough that probably doesn't.
No, go
have to be
ahead.
added.
Go right from the top.
There's some things right here that are
Yeah, but you didn't put it up. What does that mean? I still don't know.
well, maybe so. We don't know. Maybe somebody else knows.
Maybe it wasn't good. Who knows? I have to get a confirmation.
Oh, all right.
Tom, here's Californian stuff.
Well, I can get from that.
We'll take a commercial break and be right back. Rolling.
Okay. Well, grandfather his social life consisted of being, as Stephen had mentioned, fireman for the Great Northern Railway. He served 10 years on the on the high school board, 12 years for the Rural Grade School Board. He was a past Noble Grand of the Odd Fellow Lodge, past master of the Grange, and an outstanding Granger from 1953, has to be before that. Oh, must have been voted outstanding Granger in October of 53. He was on the Agricultural Adjustment Act Committee, was 6 years on the Tenant Loan Board as a Tenant Loan Board Director. He was in the flax industry and the first president in 1936 and was referred to as the father of the flax industry. He's on the State Corn Committee, the Oregon State Grain Agricultural Committee, He attended Rural Dell Grade School through the 3rd grade, and he married Nellie Beatrice Yoder in 1912.
Okay, Bob, Julie wrote some of these things down through some of the articles that she read in the various magazines and things, so I'll stumble through these a little bit. Farming intrigued Granddaddy's interest, and he devoted much time and thought to his community and the welfare of the people in it. One rarely finds a person who is completely in tune with his work. He farmed successfully for a living. His avocation was farming, and for variety his hobby was a herd of 90 beef cattle, and many of those were registered. Because of the thought and time Granddaddy put into its development, the community around him became a better place to live in. This is from, I think, the Oregon Grange paper, and it said, Albert F. Eyman, who put aside the cares of this world one day last week, was a man the like of which too seldom passed this way. Father of Oregon's flax industry and a longtime member of Oregon State Grange Agriculture Committee, Albert was a man with vision and steadfast purpose. His was a gentle, kindly soul who lived the soil and all mankind, who loved the soil and all mankind. The affection was mutual. And the last thing she wrote, I think, is really very apropos for Granddaddy. We have heard many times that it should be the aim of each one of us to have leave the world a better place than we found it. Granddaddy Albert Eyman did. That's all we have.
Rick?
And I don't know about his children possibly, but he was one of the most patient men I ever knew in my life.
Oh yeah, I got a picture of Uncle Eyman.
But running gears were good, but the motor was always weak.
Right there, and so this is Emma, you know, it starts right there. Is that right?
No. Hadn't you bought that quite a bit more? Studebaker with the thought of putting that motor in that?
Okay, I have a little thing in here. It's in this Switzerland, Oregon.
Remember that old Studebaker? That
Shall I sit down here and go through this?
Never.
You think the light's good enough?
And he's just going to carry the motor off.
Am I ready? All right. This is in the Switzerland to Oregon book by Emma Close. And it told a little episode which we thought was really pretty clever.
Well, now wait first.
This is Emma writing. I remember we found a heavy bell which had been used on oxen. Of course, the younger children wanted to play with it. One Sunday morning, Albert, who was a little fellow, was told to leave it alone or he would get hurt. Children will always be children, so soon he dropped it on his foot. When he howled about it, Father reminded him he had been told to leave it alone. Albert's big toe was bleeding, and he said to Father, "Why didn't you make me leave it alone?" That is all. Out of here.
I think it's too dark.
No.
Point that out. Here we have
One that
number
the
23 in 1932 to
one
get his
that the
license plate.
convict made.
Whoops.
Doing his
Oh
work
yeah.
for the state.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
read.
this building was built by Bill Nutt, and it had to be about 1925 because that's when Bill Nutt left. And this
This was added after the house. If you can pan on the house, you'll see that it was built in 1915.
Hey, is this lumber from Yoder Mill and planed on two sides like these 2x4s?
I think so.
Two sides planed.
Yeah.
Try not to do this too
explain to him about
quickly.
that ram and what it was for?
We never used it.
Right?
Someone should talk about this, like the storerooms at the back, and sawdust-filled storerooms. And
Oh yeah.
A garage?
Well,
Dad might trade you the ram for the.
I was curious, when was the
Oh, you've got the windmill?
when the garage was built in Ridley?
Oh, it's gonna short on wind and long on mills. I didn't know you had two windmills.
Yes.
I think we should set up the clock that swings in the basement. The pendulum swings in the basement and the clock is
Here,
upstairs.
turn around this way, Edwin, because we want to see more of you and less of your back.
Well, maybe Stephen should talk about some of the other buildings down
We're
there
gonna go.
in the barnyard.
Are you going down to the barnyard? All right, we'll.
Okay. Go to the shop and then the granary and
Bluebird.
in the barn.
now catch that bluebird in the tree.
Oh!
There it
That
is.
came out of his pocket.
See?
Now, in 1929, when they were building the chicken house, I robbed the boards to build this playhouse. At that time, I remember I could stand straight up at the back wall here and not touch my head. I had trouble finishing the roof, and my cousins, the Christians, came and helped. And both of the boys that helped me build the roof were carpenters afterwards. I suppose building this playhouse trained them.
But did you look at the roof?
Now the roof is gone.
Still need more help.
Okay, now talk to him about that. Maybe Edwin can remember about that
You might have to
gravel
move in
plant.
closer.
Now we'll show
Is
you
this like
about
supposed to be
the
right?
gravel screen. This screen was set at a plant on Bear Creek, and that was to screen the rock. There was a larger screen on this end and a smaller screen on that end, and they would, with a drag line, bring the rock up into a bunker, run it through this screen, and the larger rock fell on one side of the bunker and the smaller rock on the other. The hole that they made when they dug the rock for the gravel, we used for a swimming hole for many years until it became too polluted to swim in anymore. Edwin remembers this gravel operation well, but he can't remember the actual digging, or hasn't told me much about the actual digging. Do you have anything to say about the actual digging of the rock?
I don't know about that, but everybody and his dog came to go swimming there.
They didn't?
And it was about as wide as, I don't know, 12, 15 feet.
No, it was more like 30. I
Wide,
think.
but it was long.
Yes, very long.
I believe as long as here to that gate or Jaden garden.
More like 400 or 500 feet.
Oh, you think it was that long?
Oh yeah. You can go down and see now.
Oh, I see.
It's pretty easy.
But
Where was it?
Charlie Tyler had it.
Right over the hill.
Was it on?
Right over the hill here.
Dreyer's.
On Dreyer's side of the fence?
Yeah.
Okay. It's where the channel's straight.
And even
I rode the horse through that log. Charlie Tyler had it. And I got on it and I had to do whatever he wanted to do. But it was going this way, and swam on a bit of the end of that.
Huh.
it was 15 or 18 feet deep at one time, and it kept filling in with mud at the lower end, and the upper end would be gravel bottom. And we'd only swim, we wouldn't touch our feet in the mud end. We'd only swim down there and back up and put our feet down where the gravel is.
Pulling.
Donald said Dad, I talked to Donald about that machine shed, and he helped widen it out. And he turned all the rollers. They had that little lathe set up. Now, if there's one roller in the corner by the bullpen side, look up the mark.
Well, yeah, you're right.
Too dark in there.
Oh, the County Telephone had it, and they sold it to David Fisher for $1, and they were going to take it to Eastern Oregon, and they decided to put, we made it to here, and they decided they'd redesign their trailer, and that's what it's been ever since.
Do you want me to explain about this granary and
Yes.
potato
Yeah.
cellar?
Yes.
This was originally built in 1937, and it was built for a combination granary and potato cellar. And originally, it was only 1 story or about 10 feet high. In 1952, we built all the bins that are in there by laminating 2x4s, and the bins are about 10.5 feet deep. And that was the time we converted from sack grain to bulk grain. The bins were made out of number 4 2x4s, and at the time I bought them for $25 a jitney load. That meant about 2,300 to 2,700 feet of 2x4s for $25. We spiked the 2x4s together flat, and that's the way we built the bins. Up one length, and then we'd lay them out. And we used heavier hammers
Stop
we
going?
could
Oh, you're running
to
out of
drive
tape.
those spikes. I think they were mostly 40s.
We'll talk about the sheep barn.
Oh, that pile of weeds. The Go Devil and the son of a bitch are under the pile of weeds.
Right. You remember those two implements, don't you? That's what they called them, wasn't it?
Hey, the silo's gone.
I know the Go Devil. That only took a few minutes, but the son of a bitch, was that after you dug the...
Yeah, and it kind of trued the whole ditch up. He had a runner in front and a runner on the back, and then a cup piece that,
And you
that would
stood
cut
on it?
it cut the high spots, see?
Oh, I see.
No, you just walked behind and tried to hold that stick
Oh.
and keep it kind of straight. And I
Is
guess
it still
that
up
was-
there?
No, it rotted down. It was leaning against the back side of the old sheep shed.
Oh.
And the Go Devil just had
Was
two,
this still up there? I know it is. I've seen it.
Yeah, it was just
Had
that,
2 planks
was
in
a
it.
plank, a big heavy plank with 2.
And a pole coming
Yeah,
out about
and that's
12
what
feet
you-
long.
yeah, and you hooked the
you
team
stood
up.
right on that, and all it did is cut about a foot wide, and
Yeah.
it cut the sod.
Yeah, that's right.
And the rest was hand.
The rest was hand from there on.
But you had a line to work.
You took 2 shovels with a standard shovel, isn't this right, Edwin? Then 1 shovel with a skeleton spade.
Yeah.
And then they'd take this son of a bitch and that would true the bottom up, and then they'd throw all the crumbs out, and then they laid the tile. But
And they did, well, what would they use for grade? Just the water? that
well, they kind of would just lay out the grade before they ever started. You know, they just
To make a short run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you didn't go over a hump.
Not very much.
Yeah. You'd lay it with the draw.
But as soon as we got mechanical, well, that's when you could run grade.
And go long lines.
Any, yeah.
See, what we should almost do is undo the cord and run around and shut it.
This is a nice angle on the shot because of the sun. I'm not sure if I can remember when it was built. I remember an old shop here, I think. Oh yeah, I do
The
remember.
shop was built in about 1946 because Jack Momquist had come out he came out in 1945 when he left the service and stayed with us that summer, and they didn't build it that year, and then in 46 or 47, maybe it was 47, he came back and he helped P.D. Foote build the shop. P.D. Foote was a carpenter that lived on the corner up here where
Where'd the old shop sit?
the old shop sat right there, and it was the other part of the bullpen or the
Well,
house.
didn't you move it back here then?
Yeah, it was back here, and then finally we tore it to pieces. It was drugged back this way, but the old shop sat right where it is now.
We used to play in it because I think it was kind of abandoned, and there were so few tools and things in there to
lot of
clunk
scrap
around
iron.
with. Yeah.
Right.
And old woodways and
Yeah.
That's right. Well, would you and Grandpa go to town by steel, or did you bring it back?
To work.
Yeah.
Sure, you went all the time down in the. They would step back a little. They would go to the Front Street, and Edwin knew all those people operated in Front Street. Mainly, what's the big one that's there? Schnitzer or Schnitzer and Wolf, and not Zidell. There's another one there, isn't there? That's. But anyway, they'd go down there and hunt for steel. And one time, Edwin came home and said, "There's a whole bunch of rivets in one corner there. You can shovel up all you want for 2 cents a pound." And so Edwin had brought home a lot, and so I went with Dad and we shoveled up a bunch, and there's still half a nail keg full left there in the shop. And one time, Edwin was down there, and a man had a GMC hard rubber tired truck, and it was stuck. And the man was trying to get it out, and another fellow said to Edwin, those GMC trucks are no good," he said. "They're just stuck all the time. They're just stuck all the time."
I can hear him yet.
And the Jew that was had the shop said, "Well, all they can do is turn their wheels."
Okay, punch break now.
I thought I was the only one that knew that.
I'm gonna build my tub. Oh,
Is it shaped right?
excuse me one. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna put a line in the top.
Domino, his name was horse?
No, Don.
Don.
Yeah.
And he got it from somebody as a calf?
Tell everybody about your horse. That when you got somewhere and you're ready to come home and you turned him around, all you had to do was hang on and hope you made it because he knew he was going home.
Oh, it was very headstrong and loved to come home. Didn't like to go away.
That's normal with lots of horses.
Yeah. Who's tripping me?
How do you know what your light's gonna be? Or you just
Oh, pretty good. I don't know.
Switch it to daylight on the camera.
I don't know.
Tom, but
I don't know which to switch it.
Tommy? When we brought hay into this barn, it always came in right in the center here. And at one time there were doors there so you could take the team out that way or the wagon out that way. You brought the hay into the center, and then you had the hay fork that came down or the slings, and it would pull up into that track and go either way. And as children, we always had the job of driving the team to pull the hay up. And then we'd drive and we'd hear that, they call it a frog up there. And the hay would go, we'll say, that way, and they'd want it in the back bend and bent. And we'd already have stopped the team, and they'd holler, "A little more, a little more." And then we'd have to get the team straightened out and pull a little, "Not so much." When we put straw, usually put straw on that side, we use slings. The slings are still up there, and they were rope and wooden frame, and the straw wouldn't slide out of them. A hay fork didn't do a very good job with straw.
There's, well, tell them what those things are against the wall.
Horse collars.
Horse collars.
Where are they?
against the north wall.
I just thought a little bit ago the sun was coming through the cobwebs and all of that to the old collars.
I thought I could remember horses being on this side.
That's right.
But I don't know if I remember that or
Yes,
I've just been told that.
No, I think you're right, because we had the horses until about 1950.
Okay, they really didn't do anything after a while.
Not much, not too much.
Would you rake hay or anything?
Cultivated a little bit, even then we quit when we got it cultivated with the tractor. Yeah, no, riding horses, yeah.
And if you wanted them poured with concrete, you know,
monument in Beck. We have
One
to do
that
something.
was Lady, the great big old white horse.
Lady and Topper.
Barbara
Yeah.
bought Lady, didn't they?
His grandpa bought Lady.
Yeah,
Oh, Grandpa bought Lady,
and
and Donald
we had
bought Top.
But I can remember riding Lady, and if you
Oh,
were
they do
down
it right
there
away.
and you
Then the
turned
next
this
2 or
direction,
3 weeks.
that door better be open.
I'll just take a picture of, this is the north side of the barn. Yeah.
The outhouse that Tommy is now showing you was part of the original house, and when it was built, why, the original house cost about $1,500, and the carpenter said they always built the outhouse for free.
Oh,
That's what he said?
I thought you were going to say build it first.
And you always did your Sears shopping.
Yeah.
In the outhouse.
Watch out. This is a half monitor type hog house, which was
That's something Grandpa.
quite inventive at the time. It was built approximately 1932. The harrow that Tommy has taken a shot of, the teeth were all hammered out by Albert Eyman on his forge in his shop, and during the winter months we wore it out, dragging it over many thousands of acres.
What, that breaks up the clods?
Yes, it's called a clod masher.
Oh, yeah.
The half monitor type hog house heated the sun's rays heated the inside of the house in the winter time.
You think it's too dark?
I think so.
We'll give it a try.
You place the skate over the trough and put your feet in the trough, and then you can put it back this way, and all the pigs could eat at the same time. And they couldn't fight with each other for position. They would fight, but there would be plenty of room when you moved it back. And you had it set up so that if you wanted to work them, you could let them in or out with ropes without having to walk through their areas. Now, all this lumber was custom sawed at Yoder Mill. You notice how it's all designed for this one use, and it isn't a standard square cut beam. Had gates, doors at this end so that you could put them together. Drop a pin in here, and then you could transfer animals from one side to the other. This end of the barn was elevated and had good drainage, and when you cleaned it, you could throw the manure in the spreader or leave a pile and then load it without having to throw uphill.
Was there was a ramp out there, I think.
A ramp, I think, on the barn. I don't know if there was a ramp. Was there ever a ramp here, Dad? Was there a ramp here for the wheelbarrow or not? No. Just on the barn.
Well, do you remember that ramp, Paul?
Yeah.
There was a Y in it, wasn't there?
A wide, so it could come from both barns out, and then go to the end and dump.
Yeah, well, most of the time they never really stand quietly, but you would run 3 or 4 in there, see, and then you could reach underneath the curtain and grab them and haul them out, instead of going into a pen like that and dragging them out. Any way you do it is a terrible hard job.
It's now used for sheep and not used for hogs anymore.
Well, also, I remember a big stove over here.
It's all fallen down, but it's there, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay.
That was to cook the potatoes, cold potatoes.
Yeah, I'm ready.
This is a machine shed that Albert Eyman built with the help of Edwin and Henry Kylo originally. At a later date, he decided to widen it, so he sawed the thing in half and put the north half on rollers and rolled it out. And if you'll look in there, you'll see that he added about 20 feet of width to it.
Well, it's the 20 feet that he added the barn boards that are starting to lose their paint.
Right. Yeah.
In the middle.
Oh
In the
my.
middle. Yeah, but if you'll look,
Oh my.
under terrible stress, and if an engineer would look at it, he'd say it'll never stand up.
It won't stand much longer.
No, he said,
But it made the 64
right.
win, and I don't know why. Or the 62, whichever it was.
Well, it stood, well, it did kind of blow off, and we had to put new piers on this side, but the other side we beefed up. Are you out of cord now?
No.
No, we got lots of cord.
The amount of width that he widened it are those brighter boards there, but if you look at at that wall, it's starting to bulge. And we did put a cable and bolted it together to try and hold it for a while longer. Now pan over here to this corn crib, which isn't used any longer, but if you'll look down there, the foundation is all Model A hub. And the idea was to keep the rats from getting up in the corn crib. And I guess it worked. I don't know. This is a double crib. This is a double crib type that were built in the Midwest frequently.
And then the center was just for storing equipment,
Well, you
I
drove
guess.
in there and threw the corn off both ways. You drove in there with the wagon.
I remember doing that now that you mentioned that, or helping.
Remains of the
There was a
shingle.
cedar tree in there, and he was going to haul. I was in Portland and had an operation on my eye. And he decided to sell this Guernsey bull that had big horns. And he had a lariat on the bull, and the bull charged him and caught him right over at the fence before he could get out, and rolled him around and broke his ribs and would have killed him. But Dad felt that ring, the bull's ring, in his nose cross his face, my dad's face. He grabbed that ring, and he had the lariat in the other hand, and he tied the bull to the boards there with that ring and made it up to the house. But he was broken up, and it was 2 or 3 months before he was able to get around very good again. He'd broken several ribs. And the bull would have killed him all right if he wouldn't have been able to drop that ring.
But none of the rest of the family knew about it.
Never even thought didn't know what he was doing, you know.
Donald told me Joel was in the bull pen. Yeah.
He was?
I'd say Joel should be here, but he was there, and
He was
Joel
only-
said he didn't even know it was going on because Grandpa said, we'll just go to the house now.
Oh.
And so they walked to the house, and it wasn't till later that Joel even knew what had happened.
He told him, he put him in there and told him to stay there, and he went to get the bull, or what was he going to do with the bull?
He was going to load him up and sell him.
Yeah, he'd led him before.
Well, he had the rope on him,
Yeah.
but I wasn't home at the time.
And Joel wasn't even aware of what would happen.
Yeah.
He just had walked to the house.
Are those root beer plants in front of the...
Those are Western Oregon tea plants. And the best thing you can do is go up there and with both hands pull the leaves
You
off.
strip
and run
them
your
off.
hands up the stems. And that's how you collect the tea leaves.
You know, that's Tommy, that's a odd thing, but that's nettle, and in a certain time, it's good to eat. And Edmund tells me that his parents used to send him down along Bear Creek to get that to bring home for greens, didn't you?
We did.
But, well, they were so soft that the nettles didn't...
I don't know. I guess it was just a new shoot.
Well, it's just a certain plant.
Certain time.
Uh-huh.
And you have to boil it, and then that,
Yeah.
and then you can eat the greens.
Now, Chrissy, where is she? Now, I want to take a picture of you stripping the leaves so we can make some tea.
Chris is too smart
I can
for
remember
that.
when we were up on the Spar place, and I don't know if it was, who did it, but we found licorice growing up on the Spar
Oh,
place.
I remember that. I thought up on the mountain ranch,
Yeah,
maybe.
up on the, no, well, I can remember it on the Spar place. Maybe it was on the mountain.
Was it? But it was a fern, wasn't it? The wood near the.
Well, we used to call that licorice that grew out of grew in the crotch of oak trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I never could figure out why people liked it. It always tasted bitter for me.
Well, do you remember where George battled the pigs? That's our old black dog. Do you?
No,
Was it over here or?
I think it was probably right in there.
Well, that's what Jim said, and I didn't remember it was.
That's the only place that I would
Uncle
know.
Perry had to wade in there and
Save George.
Yeah.
No, and he did it just for us because
Oh, George or Uncle Perry?
Uncle Perry did it because we were crying and something clicked.
I turned it on. We're rolling.
This part of the bullpen, as we call it, was part of the original house that Nellie and Albert Eyman lived in their first years of marriage from 1912 to 1915. At that time, it was set over in the orchard.
Years from now, we'll appreciate it.
It'll be just like the Grandma and Mary Yoder tape you've got in the house.
You can't tell who's talking or
No,
telling?
you can tell everybody who's talking, but you can't ever get the information again, so
Yeah.
it'll always be valuable.
This is our audio-visual history.
You did the chicken house?
Not this one.
Oh no.
Well, then you better go over a little
Probably
more.
got
And
that.
John, you
Well,
better tell
I
about
think it's
those
even-
cars.
No, kind of be looking back at it because there's windows along that side. And
I don't know if
I
we
don't
get that
think
far.
so.
Just
well,
describe
we've
it.
got a lot of cable here. That's
It's-
that's video
right
part
in the
of
road.
cable for.
Richie, you're right in the road.
Well, he's not dumb.
Are you? I didn't know you were filming.
Yeah. But did you have, what like
This
when was
a
it
chicken
built?
house that was built in 1929, housed approximately 250 chickens. And this was the house that, while they were building, I stole the lumber for my playhouse.
Oh.
As fast as they were building, I'd come and drag lumber and nails over to build my playhouse.
We used to help pick eggs until Mrs. T told us about in the south the rattlesnakes would coil in the nests, and then we didn't want to pick eggs anymore.
I can remember Mrs.
Grape arbor.
Oh, they always had grapes.
Grape
They had
row.
2 rows of grapes for grape juice and jelly and what have you.
Oh, okay.
Well,
How do you think Grandma made all the good juice?
Well, no, I know that, but I didn't. I wondered if maybe he had really started with wine grapes and.
No.
There was an ulterior motive.
are these brooder houses?
That was a brooder house.
Somehow we wound up in the chicken business too.
Right now?
Where and when and
We started with,
We're gonna have them.
the kids got 2 chicks 2 years ago.
I'm filming.
To raise, just to have cute
no,
little
we're
chickens.
gonna have them.
Well, then the neighbor had a couple extra. So we,
This barn and granary were re-roofed last summer.
Awesome got some, so they were all heartbroken. So we got some more. So now we're sitting with 3 hens that survived the ordeal.
Just a minute, Richard.
Okay, we're on. Lead them.
Oh, they're talking about Edmund's property up at the school.
Yeah.
I never know see it was tight.
Yeah.
If there's any sign or anything like that, or rust in the ground, or anything, leave.
We thought we'd end up with
And maybe talking about the back of the house and the woodshed and
The shop, like I said, was built in 1947 or 46, something in there. And Granddaddy always wanted a nice shop to work in. He liked to work iron with the forge. He liked to do all kinds of forge work. And the back side of the house, the storage room on this end of the house was used mainly for wood. He'd fill this completely full of wood, and since we only heated with a fireplace and the kitchen stove, that clear full wouldn't run the whole winter. We'd usually have to refill in the middle of the winter, or sometimes he'd have big stacks on this end of the woodshed. There are also storage rooms, fruit rooms in the, this storage area.
There used to be a milk separator in there also.
Well, yeah, that's gone a long time now.
Well, it seems to me they stored milk. It was cool enough to store milk for a couple days, and then
Yes.
they pick it up.
Yeah, and
The walls were sort of filled and
no, they aren't sawdust filled, but by opening the doors and windows at night, it was screened.
Oh,
Well, then
that's
they'd
right.
close them quickly in the morning, and it'd work as a cooler. Yeah.
There's fried chicken in there. There's everything.
Do you want that manure if I dumped it over here somewhere?
Yeah, bring it. You want to get rid of it tonight? You want to get it out of the truck tonight?
Either tonight or awful early in the morning.
Let's do it. Bring it over and back in my driveway, and I got a place back there with you.
No. Does that do anything to the color? I just clicked it.
Yeah, a little better.
Trust him anymore.
Did you? Because they want to go with us and
She just did that because I told her to for Tom's sake.
There's a picture of John Donnelly.
Oh, okay.
He's driving and needs help. I bet Jack
You're supposed to talk to them.
Well, Jim.
No, it's not.
Well, that.
The movies.
Well, I'm gonna go.
That river picture.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Will I see you before? You're not going to just a second.
No.
We're going to have to
Oh, yeah.
shut up everything and either sit outside and give this supplies a good zapping.
Goodbye.
Well, it's on Prairie.
Oh.
Terry's gray hair. Are you depicting?
I think you should hone in
I looked horrible, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Still filming.
Well, we're gonna take the fireworks? Try to? Well, how do you get in your, oh, you can roll this over?
I think Roberta's.
Yeah, okay. Now I can camera?
Baby Kristen.
You're waving it all
No, I know, but what if it's red?
Well, it's just low light, I think. Actually, when you
Do you want me to identify everyone? I can identify everyone quickly.
I know, but
No, don't come ahead. I can zoom. I can zoom.
Oh, because it's not.
Well, how do
Yeah,
you
because you
focus?
can't see the people's faces.
well, it's the focal.
Go on to Richards.
I think it's a set focal length. And
Go on
you
to
just
Richards.
can't get too
Yeah.
close.
What?
Go over to Richards.
Oh, I haven't even panned yet. Here.
Well, I'm gonna go.
That river picture.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Will I see you before? You're not going to just a second.
No.
We're going to have to
Oh, yeah.
shut up everything and either sit outside and give this supplies a good zapping.
Goodbye.
Well, it's on Prairie.
Oh.
Terry's gray hair. Are you depicting?
I think you should hone in
I looked horrible, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Still filming.
Well, we're gonna take the fireworks. Try to. Well, how do you get in your, oh, you can roll this over?
I think Roberta's.
Yeah, okay. Now I can camera?
Baby Kristen.
You're waving it all over.
No, I know, but what if it's red?
Well, it's just low light, I think. Actually, when you
Do you want me to identify everyone? I can identify everyone quickly.
I know, but
No, don't come ahead. I can zoom. I can zoom.
Oh, because it's not.
Well, how do
Yeah,
you
because you
focus?
can't see the people's faces.
well, it's the focal.
Go on to Richards.
I think it's a set focal length. And
Go on
you
to
just
Richards.
can't get too
Yeah.
close.
What?
Go over to Richards.
Oh, I haven't even panned yet. Here.